Hello again, and as you can see, it's a bit of a gnarly day here in Kiev. That is not our strobe, that is lightning flashing. We are on our way today to Moscow, and there's a little thunder cracking. And as we button up here, let me just briefly apologize for my last video wherein we played a lot of music, and it was a lot of fun, and that was cool, except despite the fact that I'm a totally not-for-profit operation here, I'm not making any money off of this deal. The copyright folks went bananas and kept a lot of you from seeing the video, at least in some countries where they are a bit more draconian about copyright. In some places they just cut some sort of deal with YouTube and divide the spoils between them for whatever licensing fees there are. But I'm not in the business to be a DJ, and I'm certainly not in the business to make a living off of this, or even less than a living off of this. This is purely a labor of love, and because of that, I just want to make sure that I can continue to do that, and you can continue to see it for whatever you get out of it and whatever it's worth. So, sadly, I don't think we're going to have any more music on here, and that is too bad, because I like to spin a few records every now and again. Anyway, we'll test our auto feather, and you can see it's in progress. It's running through the different cycles there, and that's all good. We'll, now that we're looking straight at it, adjust our rudder trim, and we will adjust our elevator trim for takeoff as well. We'll make sure that our power levers are at disk and our fuel levers are on fuel cutoff. Programmed in a route already. It's a bit convoluted because, Moscow Sheremetyevo, uniform, echo, only has 71 published stars. I know. Only 71. Not so impressive, is it? But 71 stars is just, what's the technical term for it? Let's see. I'm just consulting my technical glossary right now. Yes. The technical term is, it's a shitload. And so what I did was I looked at our route coming in, and we're going to come out of here on runway 36 right, out of Ukraine, and fly to Kuros, and then pick up an airway, and then pick up another airway at Bryansk, and then go to Yuknov, and pick up yet another airway, and that will start to put us into our sort of feeder routes into Sheremetyevo. I have no idea who Sheremetyevo was, or is. I'm sure it was, but probably a hero of the Soviet Socialist Republics, etc., etc., etc. The airport was renovated just in time for the Moscow Olympics, which would have been in 1980, and it is a well-equipped facility with all the modern doodads, but I'm told from people who travel in there, it is, let's see, what is the technical term for it? Well, it's almost as embarrassing for Muscovites as any of the New York airports is for us New Yorkers. Kennedy is constantly being worked on, and I think the technical term for it is shit heap. And LaGuardia is going to be worked on soon, and the technical term for that is armpit. Newark I don't get to as much, It does have a monorail, so that's very cool, but I believe the technical term for it is landfill. So, you know, don't misinterpret that and think that I'm bad-mouthing Moscow airports. I'm actually bad-mouthing New York airports as well. There are very few really, really good airports in the United States. Sadly, some of them are big, and some of them are remarkably efficient and remarkably good at what they do. But as for passenger amenities and all the rest of it, they are all dung heaps. I believe that's the technical term for that. Anyway, we're going to push back. What we're going to do is we're going to go right out here, hang a left, and go out to runway 36. I've got already runway heading plugged in, which is 356, and I've got our altimeter, which is 2944, but I'll double check that. The weather is relatively crappy. Let's see. Thunderstorms, heavy rain, 2944, and it's going to be wind off of our right-hand side. So without further ado, make sure that our doors are closed, and they are. We will triple check our gear pins to see that they're stowed in this basket down here, because if they weren't, then we wouldn't be able to retract the gear. We'll make sure that actually this should be on standby, and radar is on standby, and we're just going to cross-fill our route from the other side. So to do that again, data, exfil, flight plan, woof, or as the mighty Rich from Flight Sim 481 says, Bosh. And we will cross-fill the fuel, Bosh, and check our flight plan, and we can see that that's good. And the other thing we will do is get rid of this discon between our SID and our en route, and let me just make sure that that's the same right here. Get rid of that discontinuity, and so that is good. So our departure calls for initial altitude 3940, runway heading, and then direct to fix, and then onto our route. So bada bing, bada boom, we'll do that. Our V-speeds are already set. Have to lock the nose gear steering. Turn off our APU bleeds. Turn on our red anti-collision lights. And call for a push. And it really doesn't matter which direction we get pushed here. We are clear of any obstacles, and we really have to just go directly backwards. So let's just push nose right. That's accomplished by going data, services, push, and waiting for the German.
Ground, we are ready for pushback.
Okay.
We are ready now.
Turn our start select to number 2. Come down and release the brake for the nice Germans.
Parking brakes released.
Pushing back now. You're clear to start the engine number 2.
Bosch. And bring our number 2 lever to start feather. Monitor our push. And as you can see, number 2 is turning. And I'm just going to turn us almost all the way around here. There we go.
Pushback completed. Set the parking brake.
And I'll turn on our Steering again.
Parking brake set. Can we get clearance at number 1?
The tow is free and clear of nose gear. Clear to start the engine number 1. Have a nice flight.
So we switch it over to number 1. We hit the magic button, and then we bring the number 1 condition lever up to start and feather. Now these are FADEC engines. In other words, full authority digital engine control, which means that you can do almost anything to them and they won't blow up. None of that ritual of waiting until the turbine speed gets up to 12 or 15 or 20% and then introducing fuel. You just jam the lever up. It's like a 777. You just flip the switch on, and when it's ready, it will do it. And because we have a stable start on, just going to move our flaps to 10, which is going to be our takeoff flaps. Because we have a stable start in both engines, normal RPM for this position, and normal temperatures and normal oil pressure and temperatures, we will just move both condition levers to max. And now you will see and one thing I'm going to do, just so that we don't be annoyed all the time, is I'm going to go into our settings and turn off our top right corner there. And so now there's no annoying indication there. Alright, so now that we're set up, what we're going to do, of course, is to check our hydraulics, pop our props into popping our spoilers in the taxi, and then we can observe the ailerons. Oh, actually, to do that, we have to turn off our gust locks. Now watch. Up goes one, up goes the other, up goes two, down goes two, and check the rudder. Bosh. Bosh. And you can see it's canted over to the side because we've set about 10 units of rudder trim. And just while we're at it, just ourselves a little bit. And I think that will maybe make things just a little more congenial here from a listening standpoint. I hope so, at least. Not sure how they got munged up, but they did, so there we go. And since we're staring right at them, we will turn our pumps on, and we'll also test our hydraulics. Number 3 hydraulic isolation valve. We're going to look for this to pop up, and then as we use our controls, we're going to look for it to come back down. So watch, I'm going to turn it off, and ooh, down it goes. Okay, that is good. So that's cool. We'll guard that switch again. Turn our gust lock back on for the taxi. And turn our spoilers again to flight. And check on our heats and turn them on. Turn on our windshield heat. Our pitot and static number 2, number 1, and the standby. And you can see that by, let me just zoom in here and I'll show you what we're talking about. Okay, that is the first officer's side. And then here is the standby. And over here is the captain's pitot tube, right sticking out right there. And there's also a static source, which is right here. But the essence, and right here, I believe that's the standby static, the essence of all of this stuff is that this senses airspeed, and there's one for first officer, one for the captain, and then a third one, that's the standby. Point being that they supply the airspeed, and if this doesn't match this, then you know you got a problem. So that's basically the whys and the wherefores of that. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to hang a right here. We're going to go out to there. We're going to hang a left and then go to 36 right as we mosey on towards Moscow. Period na Moskwy, or something like that. I don't want to butcher my I don't want to abuse my college Russian too badly. I could always curse better than I could speak. In other words, if you're regular watchers of this channel, I was well versed in technical terms. And the rain is just sort of sheeting down here, a little freezing rain. Right now I've got my bleeds on max to keep our windshield clear. So I'm just making a mental note at this point to set that to min for takeoff. The yellow here reminds me it should be white. Okay. Continuing on the ramp here, and then I'm gonna go to this particular taxiway. And a very short taxi here to 36 right, and then we're just gonna get on out. And yes, I'm taxiing like we're flying for Southwest here, so we're still below 25 knots on the ground, so that's still acceptable. Kind of sporty, but we'll dial it back for our turns. But not by much. And away we go. Tell you, this taxiway is long enough you could take off from it. It's like fun stuff. Check our trims. They're good. They're good. Try not to drift off the taxiway. That would be bad form. As we cross Bravo Bravo, or taxiway, well, notated like that, it would be, in Cyrillic it would be Victor Victor, but in fact it is Bravo Bravo, or Be Be, but it, in Cyrillic it is Ve Ve. Alright, so we're coming up on our tax on our runway here. We're just going to hold short for 1 second. Hold short of the Cat 2 line. Note that our approach end is clear. Our departure end is clear, and it looks pretty damn gloomy, doesn't it, folks? We are going to turn our transponder on. Also going to turn our radar on because heavens to Murgatroyd, we could be in for something. Alright, that's all good. Turn off our gust lock. Turn off our APU. Turn on our landing lights. Turn on our logo lights. Anti-collision lights go to white. Bleeds now go to min. And now if you look down here, you'll see that that is white instead of amber, which is as it should be. Bus tie is off. Forgot to do that. Heats are on. We're going to be mentally very, very prepared to hit icing because we are just, we're in prime time for icing right here. We'll just quickly check our route and we will note the fact that we don't really have, well, let's see, 356 and then a right turn, so that's to here and then to there. All right, it doesn't look like we have a route, but that's only because that's an artifact of the screen. It's just important to make sure that our first line is magenta, our first segment is magenta. 3940, let us pretend that that's as high as we've got cleared. So we will set our altitude at the moment to 3940. If it can be done. And it cannot, so we're going to do 3900 alt cell. Boom, boom, boom. We are in LNAV mode. We are in toga mode. We've been cleared to take the runway, to line up and wait. And one last look. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be messy. Round we go. And make it rolling takeoff. Start our clock. And feeling a little gust already. Look at that. Okay, we're above 80, looking for 124. V1 and rotate. Smoothly pull up to 10 degrees. There we are. Gear up. Get hit with a little burst of something. Very nice. Looking for 1,000 above the field. We'll get it in 1 second. Here it comes. Back come the props. Down comes the nose. And in come the flaps. And we'll get ready to put ourselves into IAS mode. Getting a little bit of bouncing here. Okay, into IAS mode. Climb right about there. And as soon as we make our turn, we will clear ourselves right up here up to 6,900.
2,500.
Alright, 1,000 away. Let's give ourselves 6,900 right now. That's our next constraint on the SID. Hit alt cell. Hit IAS. Up we go. Off come the pumps. And the auxes and the PTU bleeds go to normal, and we very quickly monitor our cabin pressure, make sure we're not leaking. And that all looks good. And in a minute we will turn towards the last leg of our SID. And that's some considerable activity, as you can see right here. Thankfully, we're going to turn away from it. As a matter of fact, we are going to get permission to deviate right now because that is way too dangerous. So round we go. I'm just going to avoid the worst of it. We are now in heading select mode. We've talked to ATC. We've said, hey, you know, you're steering us right into a very dangerous situation here. Can we possibly go direct to BBE-04? And they said, of course, we don't want to kill you. So we will punch in direct to there, and that is basically going to deviate us around that big chunk of scary stuff right there. So there we are. We have now deviated, and if you can imagine it, we're actually almost busting our speed there now that we've leveled off. So we'll bring our speed down, and at the same time we will bring our altitude up to our cruise, and we'll also set our altimeter to standard, and our cruise is flight level 250. Do a little vertical speed action at the moment. And then as soon as we slow, we'll pop ourselves into, and you know what, we're going to ask to divert again. So please let us divert, heading select, and around we go. We're just going to try and skirt that monster right there. Before it kills us. So again, we pop into heading select mode. We're also picking up ice, so that goes on. Doors open, lights come off, and the autopilot has disconnected. And I'll tell you why in 1 second. That was almost a really, really bad move. I neglected to maintain climb power. And so what happened was we continued to climb like that again. Fly the plane for a minute. I'm gonna have to do my little stall recovery here. All right. That's embarrassing. Now we're gonna avoid a secondary stall. What happened was I put ourselves into vertical speed mode. And when you put yourself in vertical speed mode, you climb at a rate of speed. And you climb at a rate of speed whether or not you have the airspeed to maintain it. And so that's what we did. And very embarrassingly, we found ourselves right there again. We're covered in ice, and we're going too slow. So, got full power in. Just going to build some airspeed. I'm going to level the wings, level the nose. That was a stick shaker, by the way. Bad form on our part. Now, as we build speed, I'm just going to turn ourselves back to our course. and put us in IAS mode for the climb. And what that means is we will climb at a speed instead of a rate. And that means that unless we're really stupid, we're not going to fall out of the sky. What I did basically was say point the nose up and send us upstairs at 5,000 feet per minute. And there are no auto throttles. There is no alpha protection like in an Airbus. And so what happened was the speed bled off, and I was busy looking at the weather and diverting around the weather. And in the meantime, our speed decayed, and then the beep, beep, beep you heard was the autopilot disconnecting, which it should, and that got my attention. And then a couple seconds later, the stick shaker, because by the time I figured it out, I realized, oh, I was climbing, and I was not at full power, because remember, we leveled off briefly, and the speed climbed up, and I oversped, and so I pulled back the power levers. And you know how they say in an accident, it's like Swiss cheese, there's a hole in one slice and a hole in another, and you don't get an accident until all the holes line up? Well, in this case, almost all the holes lined up. Almost everyone did. Attention elsewhere. In a mode that required climb power, power levers not at climb power. Attention elsewhere. Airplane not equipped with stall protection or auto throttle. And it was set in a mode where it was not supposed to keep a speed. It was supposed to keep a rate of climb. And damn it, it tried. It did everything it could to climb us up at 1,700 feet per minute, even as the speed went down and down and down and down and down. And the only clue, thank goodness, is when it said, oh my God, I can't make this work, I'm going to disconnect. And the autopilot disconnected, and we had about 20 seconds to figure it out before we started falling. And it took me about 18 3/4 seconds to figure it out, and then of course you need a certain amount of time to act. And I was plumb out of time to act before we fell. So we fell, and luckily we fell from about 12,000 feet. If that had happened on approach, we would have ended up like those poor people on that Dash 8 on Colgan going into Buffalo on 3407. The autopilot would have disconnected, the stall warning would have gone off, the stick shaker would have shook, and not quite knowing what to make of it, we, meaning Captain Marvin Renslow and his first officer, whose name escapes me, would have pulled on the controls instead of pushed, as we did, and we pushed. And we pushed because we diagnosed it right, but we didn't have much time to do it. And that's another lesson. If you get yourself into a situation where the only thing that's going to save you from disaster is a split-second decision, you have to understand that some of those times you need more than a split second to make the decision the right one. So, you know, let that be a lesson. So we're skirting a big thunder bumper right here, but we could be getting close to one here, so we'll monitor that. In addition to monitoring that, though, we will monitor the normal things we're supposed to monitor, i.e. all of the rest of our controls. So ice protection is on, our lights are off, our pressurization is fine, bleeds are normal. Let the passengers stand up at least after we almost killed them. Just going to look at our spigot to see if there's any ice built up there. Holy crap, look at this. not only is there ice on the spigot right there, this little dingus, but there's a big, thick hunk of ice all over it. Now, that's not de-iced, so let's just look at the surfaces that the boots can handle and that are de-iced. So let's see. Alright, so as you can see, even though our boots are going, well, no wonder we almost fell out of the sky. We're covered in ice. Even though the boots are going, let's give us a little breathing room here. There's little bits of ice building up here. There's ice on the spinners. You can see ice on the engine intakes. Our tail surfaces, thank goodness, are clear. And you can see we're covered in ice here. And, well, you know, it's a no good. Anyway, as we climb up above this crap, I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee and pick this up in a moment. So, having almost spun us into the Ukraine countryside, I will see you in a minute or two. Okay, we're back, and we're about a minute away from top descent into the big potato, into Moscow. And we're going to be flying into runway 6 right, I do believe, and we're going to be flying a modified star that will dump us onto a modified approach just so we can save a little bit of time. And this is essentially going to be a continuous descent to our intermediate fix. So that should be fun. We're going to go all the way down to 2,940 feet, I do believe. No, I'm sorry, 2,590 feet. So we're going to set 2,600 on the box, and down we go. We'll seat our passengers, and basically we're just going to go straight on down. Already set up our ILS frequencies. I'm just going to set little runway action there, so 619 and 911.7. So 11.7. And 619 for our airport elevation, or touchdown zone elevation. And now we're good to go in case we want to use our HUD. Now, as you can see, we're going to be coming in, and we're basically going to be turning on the world's shortest intercept right here. Make a very, very brief right turn, then turn back to about 0.05 or about due north, and we're going to intercept our final approach course. But again, we are just basically going to coast on down until we get in a position to intercept the glide slope. At least that's how we hope we're going to do it. Getting an FMS message. Let's see what it is. It's yelling because I've set 2,600 even though we're going down to 2,590. But of course I can't set it in such a fine increments, so it is complaining, but that is quite okay. And we're probably going to get hit with icing, and let me just check our weather here in Moscow. Snowing, what a shock, 2997. A little bit of a wind off of right to left, and let's see what our ceiling is like. 1210. All right, well, we are set up to do a Cat 3 arrival if we want, so let's practice one. So we're going to practice one with the HUD. So we are going to set our decision height to 0. No decision height. And we are only restricted by runway visibility. We're going to make sure that our frequencies are plugged in, localizer in nav1 and nav2. We're going to make sure that our first officer is tuned into nav2, and she is. Our HUD is set up, and it is. And do a precise metric conversion. Let's see. So Cat 3A. Oh, I'm sorry, 50 feet. Okay, so it's going to be a 50-foot decision height, not 0. It's still precious low. And what we're going to do to make it interesting, well, we're using the HUD, and we sort of have to use the HUD. Otherwise, I'd say we'd put ourselves completely heads down, but I can't really do that. And look at the HUD. So it is, after all, not a heads down display, it's a heads up display. And 2997 is our field altimeter. Put that in standby. Get our V speeds here. Flaps 15. It's going to be our usual 126. And with the wind, we will make that 134 for the V-app. And we're an hour and 2 minutes into the flight. We got a ton of fuel, but you see how it's imbalanced here? See? So what we're going to do is we're going to feed a little bit of fuel from this side to tank 1. Bosch. Once more. Sounds so much better with an English accent. Saying Bosch. Alright. Close enough for government work. Alright, it's going to complain about this the whole time, so let me just humor it. And roll off a little power. Now our altitude selected is 2590. It is below our legal altitude, but the plane is no longer complaining every 28 seconds. When we get just below 6,000, I will manually hit out right here and level ourselves off so that we don't break any rules. Let's also check our missed approach, which is to... Wow, that's a hell of a missed approach. So fly a heading, make a turn, turn back here to this reference point, and then direct to Costino. And the altitude needs to be 3580. Nice. All right. So 3,600 feet, give or take. And let's see what kind of fields we have around us. You do that by hitting the data button, and it will display different airfields. And let's take a look at our weather. It is crappy but not dangerous. And here it is. We get onto our intercept right here. We'll be at our minimum altitude right here. So this is not by any means a slam dunk arrival. Nice and leisurely. Plenty of time to wake the neighbors and phone the kids, or the other way around. Arm our approach. Boom. See, we say boom, and the British say bosh. And looks like we are picking up our localizer right now, which makes sense. We are actually on an intercept for it, and we are to the southeast of it, and that is all true. The localizer should be shooting out here, and you can see from the HSI that is correct. 064 is the course, and now here comes our ice. Also, I'll just turn on our lights. And ice protection is still on. Everything else is copacetic. Let's look at our ice here. So you just got a little bit right here. Let's see if we can see it. Yeah, a little bit on the spinners. And briefly there was a little bit on the stabilizer. And there it is again. Okay. Alright, so it's all as expected. And make sure we've got 064 in nav1. 1091, we'll check the freak. 1091. Bosh. In case you think I only mock the things he says, Rich at Flight Sim 481 puts out, I think, the most technically rigorous, comprehensive, informative, educational, and more than occasionally funny videos you'll ever see. So, hard not to smile. Alright, we'll set our local altimeter, turn on our pumps, and our auxes. 2997 is what it was. And so it is. We'll adjust our rudder trim, like so. And we'll get ready to go in the soup. A little more power here. We're going to swoop ourselves right into Moscow. Check our HUD as well, make sure it's displaying as it should. And it is next waypoint here. I wish it would name it right here, but this is the nav source, and I wish it would name our next waypoint. Flight path vector, we're going down about 3 degrees. Oh no, don't clear up. We're on path, that's our target. Outcel, VNAV path, LNAV, there's our crosswind, which is why our nose is here and our flight path vector is there. V-speed set, decision height set, acceleration altitude set. Okay, so far we're fat and happy. And we're going to pretend to fly a Cat 3 arrival. So we're going to pretend like we can't see out the window. I'm actually hoping we can't see out the window, but I think we're going to sadly be able to see out the window. Well, you know what? We can fly a Cat 2 approach. Why not? So let's do that. We're not going to look up. Screw it. We're looking down for the rest of the flight. props. There we go. We're heads down all the way. Now remember, we are going to intervene and stop our descent before we get below 2590. And then we'll manually come down. Oh, you know what? Forgot to fix my bleeds. Alright, well. There we go. Alright, fun stuff. Let's come down to about 200. Just glancing right over here. Let us slow so we can get out our first bunch of flaps. We can also do is put ourselves in heading mode, turn our nav source to nav 1. There is our localizer, and let's put ourselves in nav mode to intercept it, and approach mode because we're right on our glide slope, baby. Look at this. There we go. Now, I'm going to set our heading to 064. And from here on out, first notch of flaps, gear down. We're going to fly the plane. So, feet on the pedals. Next notch of flaps. Let the speed decay. Fly the needles. Final notch of flaps. Gumps check. It's good. Up we come. Starting to set our descent power, which should be about 17% torque. Come up a little. Start to bring the localizer in. Retrim. Here comes the localizer. And we're at VAP right now. Okay. Capture the localizer. Little low, correcting.
1,000.
Wings level. Half a dot low, correcting again. Okay, we're right on power. A little more power, a little more pitch. Over to the right there. A little turbulence. Okay.
500.
A little to the left.
Light slope.
It's probably erroneous,
Light slope. Light slope.
but we'll get back on it.
Plus 100. $100.
And
Minimums.
there we are.
Minimums. 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 10.
A lot of wind, okay. And welcome to Moscow. Got a little deviated there at the end. That's where a HUD would come in handy. Nice short taxi, though. Way straight to the gate. All right, now some of our little deviation there was probably my bad technique, and some of it is the fact that in a lot of cases in prepared and flight simulator, accessory scenery is not always lined up with the standard nav aid, so you take your chances, but that was reasonably close. With a 200-foot minimum in a standard Cat 1 ILS, that would have been perfect. We would have had time to correct, but Cat 2 and Cat 3, they get a little bit trickier, and so got ourselves a little bit under energy as well. The main problem we had was, of course, at the beginning, and that is when we almost crashed and burned because we forgot how to monitor airspeed. But we'll try not to let that happen again. In the meantime, as we shut ourselves down here, welcome to Moscow. And from here, well, my goodness, there's any number of places we can go. And 11 time zones to do it, so I'm open to suggestions for good Russian, maybe Central Asian, maybe Arctic airports. I probably want to go to Vladivostok and then probably to Japan and then down. I think I'm going to do an island hopping trip across the Pacific, which is going to entail Australia and French Guiana, Solomon Islands, all that sort of good stuff, and just sort of make our way across the mighty Pacific that way. But until then, keep your suggestions coming, keep subscribing, keep commenting, and can't thank you enough for your support. I say it every time, but I am constantly staggered by how cool the community is, and I'm deeply grateful. So, until next time, see you again real soon.